So welcome back to Wisdom Chats. I'm Susie Verde. Tonight we have a lovely guest. Her name is Amanda Johnson. She's the author of the book, Becoming Enough, a heroine's journey to the already perfect self. It's the part one of this interview was amazing. You really should check it out on the site. We've been talking about the concept of not being enough and Amanda's journey into finding her way out of this mindset that actually brought her a lot of suffering. Until the moment that she decided that she wanted something different and new for her life. And we end up the point that it's amazing, which is Amanda was saying that transformation doesn't happen as a means to an end. Transformation happens by itself. And so welcome back, Amanda.
Thank you. Yes.
Welcome back. And I would love to explore this concept because, you know, a lot of people think of transformation as a way to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. There's in the new age, I should say. I don't like this word. I think it's so outdated. But you know, in the spiritual human development world, a lot of people think that they should transform because then they're going to be rich, then they're going to find the love, then everything's going to be perfect. They will live in a world where everything is in alignment and in synchronicity, and there won't be any problems. And this is not my experience, honestly. I've been on my development path, I would say pretty much the last 30 years. And I still have to face challenges daily, perhaps not on a personal level maybe, but I still have a mother. A mother. If you know what I mean. I have the husband.
I get it.
What I mean. And whatever. We all have stuff, right? And we all have stuff. So anyways, so what are the gifts of transformation? If transformation is not a means to an end, then what kind of gifts did it bring to your life?
Yeah, so good. And there are 1,000 other things I could say about this, but I'll answer your question. So it's so wonderful because again, when I went through the transformation, which again is not just a one and done, as we know, and yet there really was that shift, right? There's always that shift. And from there, nothing can be the same. And so when I went through that shift and nothing could be the same, again, the gifts of it were that I was able to experience my life, which at the time I was living in a studio apartment in San Francisco, and I had just quit my job, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. And for the first time in my life, I was able to experience that with peace and ease. That was the first big thing. I thought, can I learn to trust that things are going to work out for me? Can I learn to trust that I don't need to rush and get a real job, quote unquote, or, I need to, do something that doesn't feel like I'm being guided that way. So the first thing I started to notice was nothing around me changed. Well, I mean, things did change actually in some ways. I was no longer, I didn't have a job. And so finances started to shift. They actually went in the opposite direction as a lot of people would think once we become this being who's now fully in sync and calling in miracles. I wasn't experiencing that at the time. But what I was experiencing was total okayness with where my life was. And I have to say, for me, and this may not be for everyone on the journey, that was huge because I had spent 30 plus years in complete resistance of everything and in complete judgment of everything and thinking that nothing in my life is okay. Whether or not that's the fact that I live in a studio apartment, or maybe the fact that I'm dating an alcoholic or any, right? All of these things that I was in just complete about, or I was single for a while and I couldn't accept that. So all of these, my transformation allowed me to, and let's not count the endless, what I'm wearing isn't okay and how my hair looks isn't okay. And when I just recorded that video, that was, maybe I need to do 3 more takes. These seem like maybe small, those aren't really important. No, it's not $1 million. It's not a new career. And yet on every day, what I experienced was walking out my door, trusting that who I am is already enough. And that shifted things dramatically. I no longer spent endless hours worrying about, well, what am I going to say? I remember one of the first times where I needed to do something like this. I'll use this as an example, even though it's, now years into my journey on feeling transformed. 5 years ago, had this been something I was being asked to do, I probably would have spent 2 weeks preparing. I don't know what I would have been preparing for, because I didn't know what you were going to ask me anyway, but I would have been preparing. I would have been thinking ahead. I would have been, making sure I would have reread some of my notes, or I would have made sure that I had rehearsed something perhaps. I probably would have washed my hair. And I would have just made sure everything was perfect. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing any of those things. I'm not saying that. For me, in my life experience, that caused a lot of suffering, and it created a lot of suffering. So as I transformed, I find that I show up to these things. I show up as I am. I show up and I trust that exactly what I need to say and who knows what's going to be asked of me anyway. How could I have prepared? But I'm going to show up knowing that it is enough. So that was one of my biggest gifts that I took away. And then in addition to the synchronicities that started to flow into my life, the fact that the money might come right in the nick of time for me to pay a bill, or I would receive a client or someone who's interested in collaborating, or something flowing in right as I needed to. And so those things started happening. And that is what I noticed. Okay, I'm on my path. This transformation, again, was not about getting anywhere. It was about being on my path and being fully accepting of every moment as best I can. Of course, I'm not always 100%, but as best I can, fully accepting. And now I show up with so much more ease and grace and joy. I mean, just boundless.
It's so interesting because on part 1, we were talking about I'm going to call it the old Amanda that had, a need to prove that you were perfect so that you could get the love and attention and approval. And what I'm hearing you say is that the moment that you realized that you didn't have to associate being perfect with being loved, then what happened was this big opening that you realized, so is that okay if I don't, do my many? Will somebody love me, the same way? And then feeling completely fine with the idea that, yes, people would love you the same way, the universe would love you the same way. And I guess what that creates is a sense of yesness to life, that in the response, life starts to say yes to you as well. And that's when you start to get all the goodies.
Yes.
Not because you're like looking for them, it's because of who you're being in the world.
Yes.
And paraphrasing you from your book is when you develop the idea of being happy, of being okay with the present moment, whatever is happening, this okayness, right? And really sort of saying, well, this is who I am, and I'm offering my love and my best to this present moment. And then kind of, the universe starts to open doors and people start to pick up really good vibes about who you are, not this tense need to prove ourselves, or this sort of, back the backstage of our minds, thinking of what it is that we should say, so we should impress, or who it is that we should talk to so that we can create a network, or how can we influence the situations to our advantage. We're just throwing love out there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
I love to call this authentic self.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we develop from one day to the other, because it does require, I would say, a decision to actually start showing up in the world in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. It's a very active choice at first.
Yeah.
To the point of, and sometimes, again, I like to look at the small things, because I think we have a tendency to think transformation needs to be huge and it needs to be grand. And I need to up and move and relocate to transform. I need to go to India for 3 months. I mean, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
By all means. And it can be in the morning when I'm getting up and I have that urge to make my bed or fix the pillow one last time. I'll just leave it. And I literally did that for, I don't know, a few weeks, however long it took. It's in the moment when I go to, I don't know, I go to fix my hair one more time and I go, oh, it's enough. And I leave. It's in those tiny moments, in those tiny decisions in each moment, that the transformation begins. And it's a decision, I believe, that we need to make, that I needed to make. And even to this day, I I needed to minimize my video window, because I knew if I could see myself, I would be thinking about how I look on this video. So I still have it, right? It's still happening.
Yeah.
And the decision is, I'm not going to let that be who I am.
Wonderful.
And so I think the transformations can be big and be really significant, and they can happen in the small moment to moments, which is the only time transformation happens, is in the present moment.
But what I hear you talk about is a process in which you are being very mindful of your very actions that could at one point represent a source of stress or self-judgment, or perhaps a level in which you were not operating from your highest intention, and you were choosing deliberately to actually be mindful of your tendency, and choosing to take a different approach, act in a different way. So you're using your power of choice. And I feel that power of choice a lot in your work. And I think it's so very important for anybody looking to change the circumstances of your life, is being mindful of, especially of what's worth being mindful of. So, we're not being mindful because we want to take off from this world, because we want to go to some altered state of some kind. We've been mindful because we want to be fully embodied on what we truly are. Would you agree with that?
So much. The power of choice. I was just having a conversation today about this, and I think it's so spot on. We give away our power. And when I say power, not that I am all powerful in that I can control everything around me and all things. I mean powerful in that I am connected to all that is. The deeper self, right? My highest version is powerful. There's a power in it because of who I am and who you are and who we all are. And we give that away every time we forget we have a choice. And I think we get, again, that familiarity zone. Again, sometimes it's a comfort zone, sometimes it's not. That safety zone feels so normal that when we say, well, I can't ... or, I feel so ... we have immediately forgotten that we are choosing that as well. I choose. And so and I challenged my friend today. I said, you can still say the same thing. I can't do X, Y, and Z. And I want you to instead say, I choose not to do X,
Yes.
Y, and Z.
Yes.
Put the power back in. So you may not choose to feel happy today. You may choose to feel in a funk. That's fine. Feel in a funk. Choose that. And remember that it is still a choice. And their choice then also gives you the power to go the other direction when you choose to, should you choose to. Again, it's my choice. I can go and get myself all dolled up and look great. And that is, I still can choose to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I can choose to show up exactly as I do rolling out of bed, either way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the power of choice is so significant as we learn to feel that peace, because when I don't feel like I have a choice, then I feel like a victim. I feel out of control. I feel afraid of what might happen. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the unsettledness comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that peace is also found in that choice that we make.
Absolutely. And also I think that the moment that we actually step into the victim position, that's when we're actually not only giving our power away, but we also start to feel like we're stuck. And then all the, limiting beliefs of what life is, and what our, the circumstances of our relationships are, what your job is all about, what your boss is doing to you. It's that's when all the stories, the difficult stories, they start to really become so real and painful. And I would say that choice is the antidote for blame. Because the moment that you actually realize that, yes, you do have a choice. What is your choice? To be in your center, to observe a dynamic that it might not be, very healthy, but you can still respond in a different way. Dealing with life from that empowered space, release blame. Because at the end of the day, you can always see every situation as an opportunity for you to actually exercise your power of observation, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
being
but
more
that's
wise and centered and grounded. And I'm not saying it's easy.
no, and not,
It's better.
and it's interesting because it's like any other muscle that you develop, and so it gets easier. It may not feel easy
Yes.
to,
Yes.
and you have another tweetable: choice is the antidote to blame. Fantastic. And I think a lot of us, we're addicted to the what just is the autopilot, right? So to take the choice in that moment and say, I'm going to choose differently, it does feel uncomfortable at first. I'm going to choose to respond differently. I'm going to choose to say something differently. Or again, we can choose to respond the same and then experience that and say, I am choosing this, and this is my part, taking radical self-responsibility.
Yes. And being kind. I love. I also was coming across some of what you're sharing in your book about kindness, about really also observing. When we observe ourselves with kindness, and we realize that perhaps the reason why we weren't able to choose better is because we didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we didn't have any mentors on our path, or people that knew a little more about how it is that we can move on with our lives in a beautiful way. Maybe they were never exposed to any joy or healthy relationships. So I would say that being kind to ourselves is so important, because I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist, and I had a perfectionist mother who was always about telling me, oh, your nose is not thin enough, or your hair doesn't look good enough, or you're overweight. I heard that so many times in my life, and I had a very limited mindset about who I was and what I could do with my life. So I totally identify with you, Amanda, with your message. And I still today, it's one of my priorities is to be kind, not only with people, but with myself. I find it very, very important to each day, do something nice and caring for ourselves. It's so important. It might be just breathing consciously, or even like saying some words of tenderness and encouragement, and listening to interviews like ours.
Yes. It's a very kind gesture.
Exactly.
Very loving. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to hear about how you're applying your your body of knowledge, the all the insights that you put together in your book. How are you employing them in your work? What are you passionate about these days?
Mm-hmm. Writing is still at the top of that. So I'm actually currently working on the second book in the series.
Wow.
Becoming Enough, very clearly, when I received that inspiration, is the first of 3 books. And so I see 2 more books. The second book, Becoming You, where we take a deeper look at true acceptance. So we look at, not only can I accept, see myself as enough, now I can really accept all parts of myself, which includes accepting who I truly am. So we start to explore the deeper layers of fear that might go along with that. That's really where I'm continuing to employ and share much of what I've learned and continue to learn on this journey. I also am very passionate. I have a podcast called the Being Inspired Radio Show. And that's something that has been in existence for a couple of years, and it has ebbed and flowed. And I'm feeling new energy being calling me back into that and continuing with that. So I have 60 plus episodes of shows where I've shared either on my own some insights, or I've had guests showed up and come in. And then I'm also feeling called currently to support other people who desire to write their stories and share them in books and other writings. And so guiding them through that process, since I've now experienced firsthand the gift that can be to us as the writer, and then also to those who receive the message. So those are my main areas of focus right now, with bringing all of this, these insights and lessons and continuous learning to light.
And who is your audience? Who do you most work with?
I would say who I'm calling in in terms of the writing, who I'm calling in are those who are also on this spiritual path. And they are, my client currently, actually, she says it so well. She goes, I want to share my story through the eyes of Source. So it's those people who, they have a story, and yet, much like we talked about in the first part, where the story isn't the thing, right? The story is what we've made it. And so of course the story is there, and it's useful. It provides the platform, the foundation from which the light can arise. And so I'm really working with those and calling in those who have the story, whatever the story may be, and they are ready to share it through the eyes of light, through the eyes of Source, taking full responsibility of it. And by doing that, showing and highlighting to others just how important choice is in the matter, and how when we choose our paths, whatever that path may look like and however hard it may seem, that is where true transformation lies. So those are the clients and the people I'm calling in to partner with in terms of writing. And I imagine those who read my writing are going to be on a similar path. They're exploring for themselves, maybe that something doesn't feel quite right, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And they're kind of done with what they've been experiencing up until now. And they are looking for a new way of experiencing this thing called life. And so they might be called to try on something new.
And it's I love what you said in your book. It's a beautiful tweet line as well. You can't receive what you haven't become. And I would like to explore, like, I was thinking of your audience and all these people out there who are wanting to write their stories and really looking at ways in which they can live life from a more empowered, um, authentic way. And it's interesting because, perhaps at this point, they might be thinking, well, this is all wonderful, and um, I'm not really able to, I'm not receiving it, I'm not receiving the inspiration. I don't know what it is that I have to offer. Maybe this is a wonderful possibility for some, but not for me. And when you say, you can't receive what you haven't become, what occurs to me is that, receiving also can mean receiving inspiration, receiving that kind of touch of the aha moment that we are all looking for. And yet what you're saying here is that this doesn't happen randomly. It happens once you actually have become what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So would you like to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. And I will start by saying that the word become, and this is important to me because I almost didn't title my book Becoming Enough. I resisted becoming because it felt like this thing that I once again still had to work toward. I had to work towards it before I could realize it. And what I love about the word become, when I looked up the definition, is that it one of the definitions is to begin to be,
Yes.
to be, meaning I can in this very moment become something because I can choose. That's the power of choice, to begin that in this moment. So to begin to be more joyful, more positive, right? Less critical. So I say that because
Yeah.
in order to receive, we must first become that which we are looking for. Doesn't mean sometime way out in the future, years and years from now. That's not what I'm suggesting or we're suggesting here. It means in this moment to make a choice, to remember, to begin to be that which I truly am, which is love, joy, peace, prosperity, abundance, all of the things that I want in my life. And as I, in each moment, remember, and again, each moment, I may have to do that again. Oh, this moment I need to begin again.
Yeah.
And then at this moment I need to begin again. And,
Yeah.
each moment I get to choose to remember that and to be that in my way of being. Again, not doing anything, but being it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I begin to receive it. I start to meet people who send me so much love, who send me riches or give me gifts, or I experience peace around me with the birds chirping. And so I'm receiving, and it may also, as you said, the inspiration. I receive
Yes.
the inspiration because, of course, I am we all are at our core already inspired beings. We are spirits. We are, connected. So as soon as I become that and I choose to be that in this moment, the inspiration can also can flow.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm.
absolutely a
I
big.
love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So there's no action, there's no magic involved with it. What I hear you saying, and I totally agree with it, is, again, yes, there is a moment of choice in which, even if you don't know a lot on how to get to this ideal stage of receiving, but you can make very simple choices of, um, choosing a routine that is healthy, finding some space each day to breathe slowly, visualize yourself surrounded by beautiful light. You can invite that light to come inside of you, to permeate your tissues, your cells, to enlighten your mind and your heart. You may also actually find some space to read inspirational reading, good reading, like, Amanda's book, or a lot of beautiful stuff that's out there. Eckhart Tolle is a It's a wonderful master, Michael Singer. We talked about his book as well. So, you know, if you're watching this video with us today, what I really would like to emphasize is not only change is possible, it is available right now, is a choice, as we and Amanda have been talking all night. And I think it's one of the most powerful things one can do in a lifetime is to make the choice of being happy, of daring to be joyful, of daring to say, you know what, I might not be perfect, but I'm whole. And I'm working towards my wholeness each day. Amanda, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you for having me.
So much wisdom, so much beautiful insights coming from your work. And we have to do some more interviews.
Yes, yes. This can be part 2 of many.
Yeah, part 2 of many. Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
So again, our guest tonight is Amanda Johnson. She is the author of the book Becoming Enough: A Heroine's Journey to the Already Perfect Self. So thank you, Amanda. I'm Susie Verde. This is Wisdom Chats. And we're delighted that you have been with us to the end of this interview. Hope you join us for future episodes. This is a place for sharing wisdom, stories, and I'm delighted to have amazing guests each week. So how blessed am I?
You are receiving what you have become.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye for now.